They told me to sit and keep quiet at my own husband's estate dinner. Imagine being demoted to background furniture at a table you bought. I didn't clap back. I buttered a roll I'd paid for, arranged my napkin like a flag at half-mast, and counted the ways you can say bless your heart without moving your lips. Grant hosted in that glossy condo, the one with the staircase that looks like a magazine apology and the temperamental faucet that recites poetry instead of giving water. He decanted a red so young it still believed in magic. Miranda clicked around in gold heels, arranging eucalyptus like it could fix her attitude. Evan did that half-nod sons do when they forget you used to be the person who knew where their favorite spoon was. There were 9 of us. Immediate family plus 2 of Miranda's strategy friends, both named with adjectives, I think Breezy and Sterling, who kept saying optics like it was a food group. The table? My Christmas gift to them. Reclaimed oak, hand-finished, shipped freight because the box wouldn't fit in my hatchback. I still have the bruises on the memory. Grant cleared his throat the way men do when they're about to be brave with someone else's courage. We've been evaluating, he said, tapping a folder as if intelligence were contagious by touch. The path forward should be simplified, which is family code for mom. Hand us the keys and be grateful for the ride-along. I asked one small question. Did you speak with the solicitor about the trust Daniel set up? It was gentle truly. Hands in my lap, voice low, the whole grandmother package with a bow on top. Miranda didn't even look up from her smartwatch. Marion, you're just the surviving spouse. Why don't you let us handle the heavy stuff? She said it lightly like a lint roller to the soul. Evan chuckled. Sterling smirked. Breezy said in a way that rhymed with move over. My heart did a little two-step, not from weakness, but from the realization that grief is apparently a door some people walk through to your pantry. I put my fork down. That sound, tiny neat, rang louder than any speech I could have delivered. I stood, smoothed my blouse, and reached for the pecan pie I'd brought, Daniel's favorite, baked in the dish with the crack he swore gave it personality. I left the pie on the counter. Let them face something sweet they didn't earn. Miranda whispered. She's being dramatic. Loud enough to be brave but quiet enough to be deniable. Bless her heart. Grant offered a shrug that said, Moms, am I right? Evan stared at his glass like the answers were printed on the tannins. I walked out. No coat, no speech, no clatter. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and new money. Outside, the air was winter sharp. I counted my steps to the car. In the driveway at home, the porch light flicked on by timer, faithful as ever. I set my handbag on the hall table Daniel built from leftover gallery crates, hung my coat on the hook he always missed, and stood very still. The house made its noises, the heater sighed, the grandfather clock cleared its throat, the fridge hummed like a gossiping bee. I felt alone and somehow accompanied, like Daniel had just stepped into the next room and was waiting for me to notice something obvious. I attempted to brew because that's what genteel widows do in the movies, then remembered I'm not genteel and my kettle likes to squeal like a toddler in a bouncy castle. I turned it off at the first shriek. Sat in Daniel's leather recliner, the one with the coffee ring he swore wasn't his, and let silence put a hand on my shoulder. Here's the thing about being told to be quiet, you start listening. And when I listened, I heard a drawer calling my name. Not literally, don't send a wellness check, but I could feel the memory of a key. We'd kept one cabinet off limits for decades. Paperwork, titles, things children promise they'll understand someday. Daniel called it the no-go drawer. I called it marriage insurance. I didn't open it. Not then. I simply placed my hand on the wood and felt the groove where Daniel's ring had worn a crescent over the years. I said out loud, I hear you. To a man who taught me that love is just daily maintenance done gladly. Then I set my alarm for dawn, laid out a pen and a legal pad like armor, and promised myself this. I would not argue in rooms that required me to disappear first. I would learn the rules they were so eager to cite, and then, as politely as lace gloves, I would change the game. Morning didn't rush me. I invited it in with oat toast and a stubborn streak. I took the small brass key from the tin-labeled buttons and went to the cabinet. The lock turned with the old, kind click of a friend remembering you. Inside. Passports, our marriage certificate with a coffee drip that looks like a comma, a shoebox of gallery receipts bound with Daniel's favorite blue twine, and tucked behind a folder marked insurance, one thick white envelope in his blocky handwriting, for Marion. My fingers did their little tremor, not fear. Voltage. The envelope held a single-lined page and a tidy stack of documents clipped together with a crimson binder clip I swear I bought for recipes. His note was not flowery. Daniel loved me in acts, not adjectives. It said, in short, that if I was holding the letter, he'd moved every title, deed, account, and authorization into my sole name, effective immediately upon his passing, because our boys are good at charm and bad at boundaries, and Miranda makes questions sound like compliments. He wrote, use what I set up. Do not apologize for surviving. Also, check the margins on page 3. The margins on page 3 were a treasure map. Little arrows pointing to phrases like immediate transfer, sole signatory, and a delicious clause about dissolving the advisory board in anticipation of undue influence. The dates were tidy and recent, the seals proper, witnesses too, one of them Mrs. Patel from next door, the other our accountant's junior associate who insists on calling me Ms. F. Like I own a record label. Here were the houses, ours in town, the cottage by the lake, the gallery shares, the small vineyard plot Daniel treated like a therapy garden for Pinot Noir, 3 bank accounts I knew about, and surprise, a modest brokerage account Daniel had nicknamed Rainy Picnics. Heat sign dated, initialed. My name marched across the pages like a brass band. I laughed. Not a cackle. Something softer like relief remembering it has a voice. Then I cried into one paper towel, select a size, the good kind, patted down my face and dialed Thomas Avery. He answered with that gravel morning hello. I said, Thomas, I found something. It's comprehensive. He said, I'll be there at 9. Say nothing to anyone. At 8:59 the doorbell rang precisely because Thomas runs on clocks, not vibes. He set his leather case on my dining table, the one with the narrow burn mark from Daniel's flambe experiment, and read every line like a conductor marking crescendos. He whistled low. He did this perfectly, he said. Marion, he left you an umbrella and patched the sky. We built a list. People to call, systems to update, titles to record, passcodes to rotate. I make coffee strong. Thomas likes his with cream and a moral. He made copies on the portable scanner he brings to clients. We worked until the noon chimes of the grandfather clock startled us both. Ready? He asked. I told him I was past ready. I was punctual. Unexpected thing the first. At the bottom of the envelope under a paperclip was a tiny brass key I didn't recognize and a sticky note in Daniel's handwriting. Bank Box 217, ask for Ms. Collins. I hadn't known we had a safe deposit box. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Your husband believed in redundancy. I tucked the key into the buttons tin with a smile. Before Thomas left, he said, one more item. When you authorize, the custodians will run the standard notices. If anyone's been exploring without permission, the system will throw flags. He didn't say names. He didn't need to. I signed the first set of forms with Daniel's favorite pen. When Thomas clicked the final document into place, he looked at me the way people look at mountains and old trees. From this moment, he said, you are the only voice on every line. I walked him out, waved at Mrs. Patel hauling her recycling and said to the day, all right then. Let's tidy. We began with the quiet chores that move mountains. Registrar's office for property updates, digital authorizations with 2-factor codes that made my phone purr like a spoiled cat, signatures that turned into authority the second the ink dried. Thomas called the estate manager and said, all instructions now come from Marion Fletcher. I listened, hands around a warm mug, as the words rearranged the furniture of my life. Then we visited Bank Box 217. The vault attendant, Miss Collins' sharp bob, sharper memory, greeted me with a look that said she had been holding a secret on my behalf. Inside the box, a thumb drive labeled rain checks, a tidy accordion file, and a surprise that made me sit down on the little stool, a Polaroid from 1983 of Daniel and me in front of the first gallery lease, both of us wearing optimism like it was tailor-made. The accordion file held notarized confirmations mirroring what I'd already signed, plus a handwritten ledger in Daniel's block letters. Things to protect if anyone gets curious. Names redacted, amounts circled, arrows to vendors who knew our signatures like they knew their own. The thumb drive? Password protected with an inside joke only the two of us knew. By mid-afternoon, custodians had executed the changes. Titles, updated. Gallery shares, consolidated. Vineyard, mine, which felt like inheriting a stubborn patch of sun. The accountant's portal now displayed a single authorized user, me. The estate email pinged politely with receipts and confirmations. Unexpected thing the second. A courtesy notice from the property firm about access logs. Unusual activity detected on the cottage entry system last weekend, it said. I had not authorized any visits. The log listed Grant's profile code at odd hours, and then a failed attempt labeled guest. I poured tea and penciled that in my notebook under the heading, People who think keys are suggestions. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Grant. Mom, any idea why the Vineyard account is restricted? Trying to pay for a delivery. 5 minutes later, another. Also, Miranda's card on the gallery account got declined? Some glitch? I set the phone face down on the table, lessons my children might consider. At 3:26, Miranda called. I let it roll to voicemail. She left one of those sweet sour messages people compose as if their tone will erase the digits on a ledger. At 4:05, Evan sent, "Did you change Dad's login for the broker? I can't get in." I replied with a period. Full stop. Grammar as boundary. While the pings multiplied, I met with the title company clerk who wears enamel pins shaped like tiny houses. We switched vehicles back into my name where necessary and canceled a courtesy second driver edition I did not authorize. The clerk slid a tray of butterscotch candies my way. "I keep these for people doing brave paperwork," she said. Evening brought a small storm of calendar invites from Miranda titled Family Strategy Chat, Estate Work Session, and my personal favorite, Narrative Alignment. I declined with a template Thomas had drafted. "Thank you. For matters regarding the estate, please direct all questions to the sole representative, Marion Fletcher." It felt like monogramming a boundary. I ended the day at the cottage, where the smart lock chirped obediently at my code and rudely at everyone else's. The lake wore the last light like a shawl. I stood on the porch Daniel rebuilt after the big wind of '09 and listened to a loon call across the water. The fridge hummed, the floorboards did their familiar complaint at the third plank, and I wrote 3 sentences in my notebook. The systems work. Curiosity leaves footprints. Tomorrow I will carry a folder. I arrived at Grant's condo just before their dinner time, when confidence is high and casseroles are most vulnerable. Miranda opened the door with a smile you could slice deli thin. "Oh, we were just about to call you," she said, which is modern code for, "We've been calling you all day." I walked to the kitchen island, the kind that thinks it's a continent, and laid my folder down. Top sheet. A letter on Thomas Avery's letterhead stating, with all the legal muscle of polite fonts, that all estate assets, accounts, and properties now listed me as the sole signatory and decision-maker. Behind it, copies of updated titles, a register of revoked access credentials, and the cozy clause dissolving the advisory board. Grant tried on a grin he must have purchased used. "Mom, we can't just move pieces without the trust's committee." "There is no committee," I said, steady as a paperweight. "Your step is missing the floor." Miranda flipped the first page with her long nails and said, "These look aggressive." She glanced down as if the paper might confess wrongdoing. "They're accurate," I said, and slid the notarized confirmations forward, complete with seals, stamps, and Mrs. Patel's extremely legible signature. A woman who trims her hedges at sunrise does not sign carelessly. Evan hovered in the doorway like an apology wearing sneakers. "So what does this mean practically?" he asked. "It means," I said, "you'll ask before you touch. It means the cottage is not a drop-in pantry. It means the gallery is not a debit card with a lobby." Grant leaned forward, elbows on quartz, trying that old trick where men pretend the table is a podium. "This feels reactive," he said, like he'd swallowed a seminar. "We had a plan to distribute responsibilities." "I'm sure you had a plan," I said. "So did the Titanic." I tucked the folder closed. "This isn't a debate. It's a notification." They were very quiet. Even the refrigerator decided discretion was chic. Miranda finally said, "Perhaps we can revisit the terms once we consult our people." "You consult whomever you like," I said. "They'll read what you just read." Unexpected thing the third. Layla, 17, eyes like a truth serum, appeared at the hallway edge with a folded dish towel in her hands. "Grandma," she said, not performing it, just saying it like home. Do you want water? The fancy kind with bubbles we save for guests? I am the guest and the hostess, I said and smiled. She grinned back, and for one small blink, I saw the little girl who used to climb into Daniel's lap and ask him why grapes are brave. I left the folder copy on the counter like a coaster you cannot ignore, thanked them for the invitation I did not receive, and walked out. In the parking garage, my car's dash lit up with an alert. Unsuccessful pairing attempt. Device unknown. I jotted that into the notebook under Curiosity Leaves Footprints and drove home humming the chorus of a song from 1972 that refuses to age. At home, I changed the Wi-Fi network in the password. Small pleasures are still pleasures. The kettle tried to sing again. I turned it off and let the house settle. Then I pulled a crisp manila folder from the drawer and labeled it, in tidy block letters, Aftermath. Morning brought an email from the gallery's merchant processor. Multiple declined attempts from user grant sales on restricted account. I forwarded it to Thomas with a note. Apparently Curiosity took a field trip. He called back before I could finish my cereal. Come by, he said. We've uncovered something. Bring your calm voice. Thomas's office smells like old books that mind their business. He slid a thin folder across the desk. Inside, statements from Daniel's gallery line of credit, cross-referenced with transfers that occurred during his treatments. Dates, amounts, vendor notes. A pattern just obvious enough to insult my intelligence. Partner authority ended upon Daniel's death, Thomas said, tapping a date with his fountain pen. These movements post-date that. Some predate it, but coincide with diminished work hours and medical appointments. We're still verifying, but... No dramatics, I said, though my pulse did a Charleston. We'll proceed in the order of paper. Unexpected thing the fourth. An email from a junior assistant at a boutique finance shop with the subject line, I think you should see this. Inside were 2 invoices bearing a forged approval signature suspiciously similar to Daniel's, except for a loop on the D he never made. The assistant wrote that she'd been uncomfortable, kept copies, and would cooperate if asked. I looked at Thomas. He nodded once, the nod of a man who sends certified letters before lunch. Back home, I pulled Daniel's last ledger from the bookshelf. He kept one by hand no matter how fancy the software got. On the final page, double-check G. S withdrawals, ask TG as in Grant. The note sat there like a small lantern that had been waiting to be lit. I dated the margin and wrote, lit. This is where folks expect fireworks. I favor sprinklers. Steady, thorough, impossible to ignore. I called the equipment vendor listed on one of the bigger charges and asked for warranty transfer papers. The cheerful rep said the order had been expedited to Grant's condo last fall. Perfect, I said. Please redirect to the gallery address on file. Click. Rerouted. I visited the vineyard and met with Mr. Alvarez, who has pruned those vines since Daniel still wore his hair like a college poet. We walked the rows. He said. The young man came by last weekend with 2 friends, asked about harvesting early for a private event. I looked at the sky, which was having none of it. No more private events, I said. Only grapes and patience. Unexpected thing the fifth. A text from Layla, Grandma, can I call you later? I found something in Dad's desk. I told her she could call any time after 4. At 4:03, she sent a photo of a letterhead from a loan company with a number I recognized from Thomas's folder and a sticky note that said, We'll clean this up after probate. Children think adults know everything. Sometimes they simply leave instructions lying around like breadcrumbs for crows. I did not storm, stomp, or announce. I updated a list titled Valves to Turn, vendor holds, card cancellations, warehouse inventory audit, vehicle title check, storage unit lock change. I had discovered a unit listed under the gallery's old P.O. box. Of course I did. Then I made lentil soup because righteousness runs better on protein than on fumes. Before turning in, I tucked into Daniel's chair with the ledger on my lap and the Polaroid from the bank box pinned under a magnet on the lamp base. I said, You were right, darling, to a room that had the decency to keep a confidence. Then I set tomorrow's outfit on the chair like it was a uniform. Good trousers, sensible shoes, cardigan with secret pockets. We were moving from discovery to choreography. The next morning, a cream envelope arrived, hand-addressed to me in tidy script that tried too hard. Inside, a recommendation form for a capacity evaluation with a dramatic red highlight. Cute. I'd seen this play performed by less talented actors. I drove it to Thomas, who scanned it deadpanned. "Ah yes, the please hand me the shovel form," and started making calls. By afternoon he had the story. Miranda had contacted a notary she knew from a networking group called, I am not kidding, Power Brunch, and asked for a backdated note just in case. The notary's assistant, Sensible Shoes Moral Compass, forwarded the email thread to Thomas with an apology. She didn't expect anyone to check the metadata, Thomas said, sipping coffee like justice pairs well with cream. He filed the appropriate motions and forwarded the record to the county investigator. I did not post, boast, or toast. I watered my African violet, called the locksmith, and scheduled an appointment to recode the condo garage fob I had been scandalously naive to keep active. Unexpected thing the 6th. A call from Miss Collins at the bank. A person attempted to access box 217 with a photograph of a key, she said. Our policy is firm. I laughed. Tell your policy it has an admirer. She said the would-be visitor left in a hurry when asked for identification. I wrote photographed key, bold/inept, in my notebook and bought a locking key cover from the hardware store. It's brass and makes me feel like a lighthouse keeper. Late afternoon, the county office called Miranda to answer questions about the forged recommendation. By evening, a cruiser rolled up outside Grant's building, lights not flashing. The neighbors practiced their curtain twitching. I did not attend. I was home labeling folders. Access attempts, forgery correspondence, hoopsies for my eyes only. The phone rang at 9. Layla. Grandma, Dad says this is all a misunderstanding, but Mom was shouting. Her voice was small but not brittle. I told her, you are allowed to love people and disagree with their choices at the same time. That is called adulthood and neck pain. Drink water. Keep the document you found in a safe place. Use your school locker if you must. She laughed, hiccuped, thanked me. I sat there afterward, grateful that the one person in that household who still recognizes north has her own compass. Before turning in still learning, I drafted an email to the gallery staff. Schedule unchanged, payroll consistent, inventory audit upcoming, inquiries routed to me. I added a note. If anyone feels pressured by outside parties, please forward me the communication. You will be protected. The replies came in a soft rain. Thank you. Understood. Relief shaped like sentences. Sometimes revenge is just refusing to be erased. Sometimes it's a paperclip in the right place. With the fires contained by paperwork and patience, I turned to construction. I met with the title officer to finalize a small deed change I'd been mulling. The lake cottage into Layla's name upon her 21st birthday, with use rights for me until then. The officer wore earrings shaped like tiny gavels and said, I like this clause. It has backbone. I said, it takes one. I called the vineyard supplier to renegotiate the barrel contract Daniel had signed out of optimism rather than math. The rep tried to sell me on oak that could change your life. I told him my life had been changed enough by wood, thank you, but we would consider 3 barrels if he threw in the good bungs and a delivery discount. He laughed then agreed. A woman with a ledger is hard to upsell. Unexpected thing the 7th. A handwritten letter arrived from a woman in Iowa who'd heard, via a cousin of Mrs. Patel, that I had navigated the Shark Tank without losing my cardigan. Her children had convinced her to modernize access to her accounts the day after her husband's funeral. She wrote, I didn't know you could say no. I thought no was for people with fewer casseroles. I sat at my kitchen table, poured tea, and drafted the charter for the Daniel Fletcher Legacy Fund small grants for widowed folks over 65 who need a lawyer for a day, a locksmith for an afternoon, or a very firm script for boundary setting. I met with a nonprofit consultant who spoke plain and didn't try to sell me a gala. We wrote a 1-page application and a promise. Approval within 48 hours for emergencies. I funded it from rainy picnics, because it felt like the right afternoon for generosity to get a sandwich. I also did the housekeeping that feels like sweeping crumbs after a feast, closed a dusty P.O. box, updated beneficiary designations on accounts that still wore Daniel's name like a favorite sweater, and donated a stack of gallery frames to the Community Arts Center where children make masterpieces out of glue and hope. The director cried. I hugged her. We both pretended our eyes were reacting to the varnish. Unexpected thing the 8th. The HOA at Grant's building sent me a letter meant for him about noise complaints during midnight inventory activities. It landed in my mailbox because someone forgot to update the forwarding. I forwarded it to Grant with a single note. Your neighbors prefer lullabies to forklifts. He did not respond. Silence can be a courtesy when used correctly. In the evening, I sat on the cottage porch and watched the lake change colors like a shy peacock. I wrote 3 new lines in the notebook. A boundary that helps others is a bridge. Oak barrels smell like second chances. I am allowed to want quiet. I slept. No, I rested well for the first time in weeks because rest is what happens when you choose the next thing instead of replaying the last one. An invitation arrived from Grant. Let's reset. Casual dinner. Just family. I RSVP'd yes because sometimes you have to stand in the room where the eraser used to live and remind it you bought the pencil. The condo looked the same, but the air had shifted. Miranda was not present, busy with appointments, I was told. Evan hovered, pouring water like it might apologize for him. Layla sat beside me, hands folded, eyes steady. She'd braided her hair the way I used to braid her mother's when we were late and pretending we weren't. Grant started with, families go through seasons, as if autumn had filed a motion. I held up a hand. Seasons happen to trees. Choices happen to people. He swallowed. The room adjusted itself around the sentence. I'm not here for détente, I said, voice warm like a quilt and firm like a headboard. I'm here to confirm the weather report. The estate is secure. The gallery is operating under my signature. The vineyard will produce according to nature, not calendars made of ego. The cottage is not a staging area for party favors. If you need a key, you'll ask me. If you need funds, you'll provide a budget that looks like math, not jazz. Evan said, almost whispering, I miss Dad. I nodded. So do I. He would have liked the part where I negotiated barrels. Small smile. A truce, not a treaty. Unexpected thing the 9th. Layla slid a sealed envelope across the table. For you, she said. Inside, a photo she'd found of Daniel holding baby Grant, all cheeks and astonishment, and a post-it from years ago in Daniel's hand. Make sure Em knows she did it all. I just carried the ladder. My throat did that tight violin string thing. I put the photo back in the envelope and into my purse, right next to the buttons tin and a peppermint I'd been saving for no good reason. I stood. You told me to be quiet, I said, looking at my sons. But I wasn't quiet when I built this family. I won't be quiet while I keep it upright. You don't have to like my boundaries. You do have to respect my ownership, legal and otherwise. I pointed gently at the table. This? I bought it. Tonight I'm also taking my chair. I took the chair, literally the one with the comfortable back that doesn't squeak because petty can be practical, and walked it to the elevator while Layla tried not to giggle. In the lobby, the concierge held the door and did not ask a single question, which is why he will receive a very nice holiday card. Outside, the air tasted like clarity. I loaded the chair into my hatchback and drove home along the lake road, where the streetlights reflect on the water like quiet exclamation points. In my driveway, the porch light clicked on right on time. I carried the chair inside, set it at my kitchen table, and made a note in the ledger. Brought my own seat. Found my own voice. Kept both.
Share your thoughts in the comments. What's the most surprising thing you've ever discovered in a drawer, box, or envelope? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.